Welcome to the Insane Sequel Series Part 2. The first one was wildly unsuccessful, so I thought I would do a follow-up. If you didn't watch the first one, basically the only rule is that it has to be the second sequel. I don't want to spoil anything for you, so I timestamped everything, so just slide ahead if you don't want to hear the endings. And if you think I missed any, leave a comment. Maybe I'll do a part 3 if there's enough. This was all that I found on my list, but I know there's definitely more. But without further ado, let's begin. How about we start with Grease 2? Grease 1 is about two teens who fall in love during a summer fling, but when they find out they're attending the same school in fall, they've got to try and deal with the pressures of societal norms. Sandy doesn't know how to fit in with the bad boys because she's a prim and proper girl, and John Travolta doesn't know how to fit in with a girl because he's gay. It's a fun tale of hierarchy, social pressures, and heteronormative conformity mixed in with amazingly iconic music, whereas the second is just about so many terrible bad songs, except for this absolute banger about banging. Just classic high school sing-alongs. Michelle Pfeiffer is the main protagonist, and she's just an awful person who doesn't like this dude because he has an English accent. But just like Christian Bale, he dons a Dark Rider costume and pretends he's American. So basically, it's just Catwoman falling for Batman. Wait, is that Shooter McGavin? Is this a Shooter McGavin origin story?
Yes! Shooter!
Sweet. Every single person in this movie is a huge dork. There's a teenage pregnancy subplot that's played off for laughs that goes nowhere. These dudes try and convince this girl that there's a nuclear holocaust, so this dude can pressure her into banging him.
Just think about it, Sharon. It would be like as if we were doing it for the Statue of Liberty.
Or the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, the New York Yankees.
It'll be like we're doing
it for Disneyland. Yeah, let's do it for our country.
And Michelle Pfeiffer uses a ladder as a Sibian. It's a mess, and oh, it's bad. Don't recommend. Yeah, let's throw that one in the big departures as well. Oh, and speaking of Michelle Pfeiffer, I want to give a mention to Batman Returns. In my last video essay, I went into pretty good detail about why this movie is so special and also insane, so I'm not going to run this one back again, but I do want to point out that this clown who steals a baby in this scene is actually Mac's dad from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I'm not really one for speeches, so I'll just say thanks. See you, son. See you real soon.
Yep, it's true, and he gives the baby to Danny DeVito. Wild stuff. Biggest recommend. Big departure. Actually, I might as well put Gremlins 2 in here as well. It was also my last video essay. But I think this is the pinnacle of insane sequels. Also, here's a fun fact. Gizmo is voiced by Howie Mandel, which is odd.
Have you ever sat naked and just put a pair of like sunglasses on your dick?
Huge recommend. This one's different in every way, and it's the best. Next up, we have Clerks 2. So Clerks 1 is pretty beloved by a lot of people. And as a kid, I kinda liked this movie, but going back, I think the main reason it was so impactful at the time is that it really broke convention. Not a lot happened, the dialogue was very conversational and freeform, and it was very slice of life, which was all novel for the time. I really don't think it holds up.
What do you mean there's no ice? You mean I gotta drink this coffee hot?
So how much is this thing anyway?
And the sequels get progressively worse and more pitiful. But the main point is that Clerks 1 was about two dorks in a convenience store talking about nerd stuff. The second one is about them working somewhere different, which makes the pouty weird one want to move on with his life, but the alcoholic looking one is sad about that, because they're secretly in love with each other or something, and it's just annoying. And there's also a donkey show, where a dude does donkey show stuff. They end up in jail and cry to each other about feelings, and how their codependency is toxic.
So that's the way you see all this time we've spent together? I thought you were the only guy in the world who got me and had my back. Guess I assumed you felt about me the same way I feel about you. Do you know what that's been like for me?
Jesus, why don't you two just fucking get it over with already?
And they get released from jail, and instead of growing up and moving on with their lives, they buy their old convenience store and end up exactly where they were at the beginning of the first movie. Kevin Smith is an overrated hack. Don't recommend. This is a big departure. Next up, we have the sequel to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is a pretty self-explanatory title. A scientist inventor accidentally shrinks some kids. So naturally, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid is about the scientists exploding babies. It's actually pretty heartfelt. I don't really recommend it, but Rick Moranis is a legend. This one's another big departure. Moving along to Basket Case 2. The first one is a wild cult favorite about a dude who was born with a malformed brother attached to his abdomen. Despite both of their protests, doctors separate them, but just like those two insufferable twats from Clerks, these guys stick together because of their weird codependent bond. Basically, the ugly blob one, the other ugly blob one, yeah, that one, kills whoever gets close to his brother. The end. Okay, the second one. This is a wild ride. Basically, they're found by a lady who harbors malformed, monster-ass people in her mansion because she believes they're people too. So kind of like X-Men, but all mutant and no power. And instead of saving people, they just kill people. There's this hammerhead chick, this moon guy, this reptile guy, a French dude, Prince William, Mickey Rourke, and even Adele. It's kind of like Wes Anderson meets David Cronenberg, and it's just wild. Plus, a blob guy meets a blob chick, and from the moment I saw them, I knew it was gonna happen. Yep, that happens. Because of course it does. Also, the brother's in love with this girl, who's also at the house, and you assume the chick blob was cut off of her. But then she reveals she's been pregnant for 6 years with this thing, and that makes the brother lose it and kill her, and then he sews the blob back onto himself. Thematically, none of this makes sense, but it's honestly all pretty entertaining. Just don't expect it to be as good as the first. It's basically Garbage Pail Kids for adults, which is arguably just Garbage Pail Kids. It's crazy. I recommend it. You can definitely say this one is different in every way, but I had to put it into insanity, because it really is that. Next up is Cube 2. Cube 1 is a strangely surreal movie about people being stuck in a shifting cube full of traps and weapons. It's actually a pretty interesting and engaging movie that shows us that a great concept overshadows the need for a large budget. Just practical effects, good set design, and an inventive concept. The second one shows us the opposite. There's floating CGI acid that looks like the water from Wave Race 64.
Wave Race!
Gravity changes between rooms. There's alternate reality rooms, a meat shredder tesseract thing, time rifts, and parallel universe versions of characters. It's explained that the first cube was a mechanical moving construct, while the second is a quantum physical accelerator thing that was meant to experiment with teleportation theory or something. Honestly, just skip it, and its sequel. It's kind of like how Matrix 1 was fairly grounded with a simple but rad concept, and every next movie kind of just ruined it by over-explaining it and convoluting everything that was great about the original.
The function of the one is now to return to the source, allowing a temporary dissemination of the code you carry, reinserting the prime program.
Well, I like how confusing that is. More CGI, less creativity. Nope. Don't recommend. I'm gonna slide this one in big departure. And there's Crocodile Dundee 2. So the first one is just your classic fish out of water movie. Crocodile Dundee is just your standard savage drunken hillbilly from Australia, whose life is flipped upside down when he goes to New York and has to adapt to a country that isn't a giant open air frat house. That's pretty much it. The second movie asks what would happen if you left an Australian in a civilized world for too long. And let me tell you folks, the results ain't good. He decides to roam around skyscraper ledges, trying to coax disheveled business brokers to jump. But after numerous successes, even this begins to lose its allure, and he turns to a higher purpose. In an attempt to replicate the thrill of Australia and its goon-bag-fueled cross-continental dystopian fetish warfare blood frenzies, he decides to unify the most hostile and highest-ranking organized crime factions of all the nations. He forms a tentative peace pact between a Colombian cocaine cartel, the Black Panthers, the Chinese Triads, and the Foot Clan. Although the pact is tenuous at best, Dundee manages to convince the head warlords of each syndicate to commemorate their peace treaty with an Australian outback excursion. They all accompany him to his swamp and engage in Australia's national sport, drinking piss-poor beer and punching each other in the dumb faces. After a few days of this fun, the CTE starts to set in, but before it goes too far and they all start speaking Australian permanently, they decide to leave. But then Dundee destroys all their vehicles, at which point the truth is revealed. Turns out Dundee is the true leader of Australia, who worships the dark arts, talks to animals, and is a shamanic chimera of a man crossed with a crocodile. His plan this entire time was to travel to a metropolitan port city so he could seek out the apex predators of the human race, so he could corral them all and offer them as a sacrifice to the Aboriginal tribesmen of Australia in an attempt to reconcile the genocide that his colonizing imperialist Caucasian forefathers enacted generations before. After a few rousing bouts of men hunting men in a battle royale of the most dangerous game, they're all rounded up one by one, and the Lord of Australia and the Aboriginals take part in a magnanimous smorgasbord of international man meat. The end. Don't recommend it. Another one for the big departure category. Okay, now I've got The Descent 2. The first Descent is about chicks with a shaky history of going into a cave to try and use the adventure to rekindle some bonds and get over some trauma. It's basically like The Ritual, but in a hole instead of the forest. It's honestly pretty good. The second movie begins directly where the first one ends. The lone survivor has amnesia though, because of bad writing. And this sheriff guy assumes that she killed all of her friends. So his plan? His plan is to assemble a team to go into the caves, and they bring the chick who can't remember what happened in the cave to help her remember what happened in the cave, so she can be their guide, even though she doesn't remember what happened in the cave, and even if she did, this is a different cave. Some dude who owns the property where a mouth of the cave is alludes to the notion that the cave is an entrance to hell or something, and they go in the cave. Everything is really gory and not scary this time around. And also, the underground caves are incredibly well lit. like look at this. This is a cave. And the girl from the first movie that got stabbed in the leg and abandoned to the hordes of underground goblin things is actually alive, and her leg is fine, and she's basically Sarah Connor from Terminator 2 now, but so is the amnesia chick now, and the chick remembers everything, and stuff happens, but without the strong thematic undertones of the first movie, and it ends with this chick escaping, but the dude who owns the property smashes her head in, and she gets thrown back down to the cave, and jump scare, the end. Kinda just gross and dumb. Don't recommend it. This one's another big departure. Now we've got the Ewok movies. I wouldn't be surprised if most people don't know these exist. The first one is called the Ewok Adventure. I honestly really liked the first one as a kid. It's basically your standard sci-fi fantasy adventure movie. A family is stranded on a planet, the parents are captured by this gigantic monster creature, and the kids join up with the Ewoks to try and save them. Wait, is that Ruth from Ozark? Is this a Ruth origin story?
Get some, skinny bitch!
Sweet. It's a pretty straightforward narrative, but includes some touching interactions between the kids and Ewoks, some honestly frightening scenes involving the predatory creatures of the world, which I should mention were made by Phil Tippett, which is probably why they work so well, and some harrowing sacrifices by the Ewoks to help the kids along the way. They save their parents, the end. The second is called Battle for Endor. How do we follow up this charming family fun adventure? Easy. Kill this little girl's family in front of her in the first 5 minutes, and then kill most of the Ewoks, and burn down their village, and take the rest of them as prisoners. Jarring. Very jarring. Also, it kind of immediately renders the whole first movie pointless as well. So it's just an orphan girl and one Ewok left. They meet this terrifying creature that's a mix of Alf and the Flash, and he introduces them to this angry old douchebag man. Basically, this movie is just a brutal story of acceptance in the face of imperialistic brutality and cosmic nihilism. You have to accept death, since the universe is indifferent to it, and that isn't fair, but life isn't fair, so fucking cry about it, you little baby. I was looking up comments about this movie, and this is literally what happened. Brutal. I honestly recommend the first one because it really is charming and captivating, but the second is kind of just too bleak to be anything special. Don't recommend. This one's definitely different in every way. Next is Exorcist 2. I think we all know about the first one. Chick is possessed, bunch of hectic stuff happens, priests wrestle with the demons in his own faith, and sacrifices are made. The end. Well, the second one, we've completely undone the ending of the first because the girl's still possessed. Also, it's a new director, and he stated that he didn't like the dark and ugly tones of the first one, which kind of shows that he missed some of the thematic points made, but whatever. Anyway, he wanted to basically make an anti-Exorcist movie. I don't really get why he would try and make the sequel to a movie as a protest to the original. Why not just make a different movie? Whatever. What he made was more of a supernatural thriller that isn't thrilling at all, and the whole thing is poorly paced and just kind of confused. I could do a whole plot summary, but it's just different in every way. And the first is debatably the scariest movie ever made, and this one is intentionally not scary. Don't recommend. I'm gonna have to put this one in unrecognizable. On to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I'm assuming everyone knows about the first one, but a quick recap. It's presented as a real event, and it's a very gritty and down-to-earth suspense horror where a bunch of teens are hunted and tortured by a perverse hillbilly family, and Leatherface is the main muscle of the operation. The second one basically asks us what the movie would be like if the family was the main focus, but it's a comedy, but kinda not, and barely anyone gets killed, and there's no suspense. It's kind of entertaining, but the family is all pretty annoying, and their interactions go on for way too long.
Bubba likes her. Bubba's got a girlfriend. 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 Bubba's got a girlfriend.
Is that what this is, Bubba?
Some highlights are Leatherface falling for the main girl inexplicably and kind of performing chainsaw sex on her. If you torture enthusiasts are enticed by the prospect, don't be. It's just Leatherface thrusting his chainsaw in the general direction of her crotch, but not cutting anything while he just grunts and moans and stuff. Leatherface is really just a dumb oaf in this movie. Dennis Hopper plays a completely unhinged cop type and double wields a chainsaw and has a battle against Leatherface with them, 30 years before Mandy did it. Dennis Hopper said at the time that this was the worst movie he ever made. Little did he know that one day he'd be in the Super Mario Bros. Movie.
I'd like the Koopa special.
Pterodactyl tail on that?
Yes. Dino, lizard, hold a mammal, no worms, and spicy.
This crazy old dude serves chili made with human meat, 20 years before South Park did it.
Yes! Yes! Oh, let me taste your tears, Scott.
And the whole crazy family lives in this weird amusement park where they torture people and kind of just be annoying caricatures of people you'd see in good horror movies, 15 years before House of a Thousand Corpses did it.
Total block! Total block! Non-flashback! Non-flashback! Oh!
It's definitely wacky and a complete departure from the first, but the whole thing is more grating than endearing for me. Don't recommend it. This one's definitely going in the different in every way category. Then there's Caddyshack 2. So the first Caddyshack is an absolute classic. Basically your standard slob versus snob 80s comedy with some incredibly memorable scenes and hilarious performances by legends like Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, and Rodney Dangerfield. It's charming and funny and is essentially about a bunch of feuds and issues being settled in a golf tournament, all while Bill Murray goes to war with a gopher. It has a lot of non sequitur scenes for sure, but that's part of its charm. Caddyshack 1 is rated R and Caddyshack 2 is rated PG, and that was enough of a red flag for Murray to pass on it outright. Dangerfield was down, but he bounced. He was going to get $7 million, and they sued him for millions for bailing, but he didn't care because he knew how bad it was going to be. Basically, every character gets a knockoff actor playing the same archetype. The love of everything golf has been replaced by indifference to a mini golf course with no Caddyshack, and laughs are reduced to fart jokes and slapstick, and now the Gophers can talk. You've got Dan Aykroyd trying to live up to Bill Murray's legendary performance while doing a voice that sounds like a Jack Officer from South Park.
Hey, little golfer! Hey, it's your friend Tom! I got junk food!
Steven, where's their boat? Yes, that's very funny.
It's so bad. A lot of the plot beats are retread, but the actual story has the alleged protagonist wanting to destroy heritage buildings by setting up subpar developments, but the people in the area rightfully opposed and try to stop him with legal action, but his lawyer threatens to kill their family and eat their dogs, so they don't want the guy in the country club, so he buys it and ruins it by turning it into a mini golf fun center, and they have a golf tournament to settle the dispute, and he wins, so now he can destroy their homes and build soulless subdivisions with terrible infrastructure. How is that the protagonist? It's confusing and not funny and just generally obnoxious. Don't recommend it. This one's going into the different in every way. Then we've got Escape from LA. Escape from New York is one of John Carpenter's finest works. It's very atmospheric, has some amazing world building, and Kurt Russell is a man, like always.
You gonna kill me now, Snake?
I'm too tired. Maybe later.
Even though its setting is intentionally hyper-realistic, it stays quite grounded while stylized. The general plot is that Snake Plissken, played by Kurt Russell, is a fugitive in a futuristic wasteland version of New York, tasked with the dangerous mission of going into the gangland to save the president, who is being held hostage there. He faces off against gang factions and manages to save them just in time. It's kind of like Die Hard mixed with The Warriors. It's pretty rad. Escape from LA came out hot on the heels of this success, just a cool 15 years later. In the sequel, a series of earthquakes has separated LA from the rest of the country, which in my opinion is a huge win. Roll credits. Nah. Actually, the rest of the country has become highly moral, virtue-signaling pussies, and LA is now a corrupted prison state. So basically the complete opposite of current times. A Cuban terrorist uses the president's daughter to steal a device that controls a satellite EMP weapon. It's the 90s, so of course there's an EMP.
We'll isolate the node and dump them on the other side of the router.
I'm trying. It's moving too fast.
Oh, this is not good. We're using our connection to the APHIS database.
What is that, video game?
No, Tony, we're getting hacked.
They've implanted a virus bomb in his body that will set off in 9 hours, so he has to go and save her. The first one had him narrowly avoiding gang members and thugs using just his wits and ingenuity. And in this one, he plays basketball to the death, goes hang gliding with drag queens, and chases a car on the road while surfing beside it.
Gotta be kidding me.
Nope, this is happening, Steven. This is happening. Also, there's plastic surgery monsters, which I guess is a knock on LA folk.
Jesus Christ, that thing's real!
I don't know. The whole thing is zany as hell, and if you look at it like satire, it's pretty fun in how intentionally over the top it is, but just don't expect the same vibe as the first one. I still recommend it though. This one's definitely a big departure. Next up, we got Cars 2. So Cars 1 is kind of just your standard Pixar fare. The cars are all anthropomorphized, and hotshot car learns to find friendship and humility as he works along small town folk to discover that life is about the journey, not the race. Literally, and metaphorically. It's simple, it's charming, it's quaint. The second movie is a full-on espionage action flick, wherein cars shoot, torture, and murder each other. It's a spy movie where the main character literally has to prevent genocide as his world is crumbling around him, and he unwillingly becomes a savior in an effort to stop the oil-conspiring global elite eugenic fascists threatening to end the world. It's a lot, and somehow still rated G. I recommend it. Another one for the different in every way. Alright, next we got Sleepaway Camp 2. Sleepaway Camp 1 is essentially a prototypical summer camp slasher. It's a fairly gory and brutal flick that's obviously reminiscent of Friday the 13th. It even has a pretty wild twist ending, which I won't ruin for you, because I'm assuming most people haven't seen this one. The second movie is called Unhappy Campers, and it definitely takes on a different tone. The first one is pretty suspenseful and utilizes a lot of mystery and misdirection to genuinely cultivate a sense of fear, but the second one is just kill after kill after kill with little to no atmosphere. There's 18 kills in total, which is pretty aggressive, even for the slasher genre today. It references Leatherface, Jason, and Freddy, kind of for no reason, which definitely breaks immersion, but the movie is honestly just trying to be a fun time rather than a scary time. The silent, mysterious killer of the first film is replaced by a boisterous, talkative, one-liner cracking villain who seemingly knows her in an 80s schlock fest. Oh, and by the way, the killer is literally Bruce Springsteen's little sister. If you like cheesy 80s slashers with lots of tits and inventive kills and zero depth, I recommend this one. This one's definitely a big departure. The next movie is a sequel to Rocky Horror Picture Show. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is beyond a cult classic, an absolute insane musical with a legendary performance by Tim Curry. It's a zany story about a stranded couple ending up at a weird-ass fetishy cult mansion where Tim Curry is a mad scientist, trying to create the perfect specimen of a man to bang or something, I think. It's a really, really strange movie, but it's a lot of fun. Well, first off, there's no Tim Curry in the second one. Lame. Secondly, it's kind of more of a PG fare that doesn't really play into the whole over-the-top psychosexual wackiness of its predecessor. Alright, but what about the plot? It follows Brad and Janet in a small town that has been taken over by a media company juggernaut that's controlling all the townsfolk with programming of consumerism and the ideals of the nuclear family. Brad and Janet want to work on their marriage, so they join one of the network's game shows. Brad gets enrolled into a therapeutic institution kind of thing, and Janet is turned into the next big celebrity idol. But then it's revealed the whole thing is a reality show that's meant to criticize toxic relationships and the ways they break down. But then it's revealed that the whole network is run by Brad's long-lost jealous brother, but Brad and Janet escape, and the townsfolk start the cycle all over again, continuing the trend of TV consumerism forever. The whole thing is pretty disjointed and misguided, but definitely still shows that the creative team was trying their best, despite a lackluster script and musical numbers. It kind of just comes across as heavy-handed social commentary over wacky, weird fun. It's not a blast, but does predate to predict the forthcoming wave of media dependency and reality TV-based phenomenons of the 2000s. I kinda recommend it as a standalone, but don't recommend it as a Rocky sequel. Again, this one's gotta go into the big departure category. Next, let's take a look at Dead Snow 2. First movie, pretty simple. Nazi zombies. Nazi zombies. There's a bunch of medical students on break going to a cabin. Nazi zombies start killing off the group. The group weaponizes. Someone mounts a machine gun on a snowmobile. Wackiness happens. So much blood. Turns out the Nazi zombies just wanted their gold. So it's kinda just Shaun of the Dead, mixed with Overlord, mixed with a leprechaun. Pretty fun all in all. The second is just insane. It's called Dead Snow, Red versus Dead, because the good guy's side recruits a bunch of zombie Russians, but I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Actually, nah, I'll just lay it all out here. Instead of a group in the wilderness being attacked by zombies, we learn that Hitler has told the Nazi zombies to continue their conquest, and the lone survivor of the first movie teams up with the American zombie enthusiasts and Russian zombies to battle on the home front. There's magic, a giant Russian zombie, and a Jason Statham-type character fighting the Nazi zombie on a tank. It's very, very much next level. And honestly, a pretty entertaining, well-made movie. If you like this kind of over-the-top genre blending, I definitely recommend it. You can make an argument that it's a big departure, but I think this one fits better and is similar but jacked. Next up, we got House. House 1 is rad. It's basically an 80s haunted house horror that's really funny and has some great creature designs. I really thought it'd be a run-of-the-mill kind of affair, but it's very unique, has some inventive scenes, and some great interactions between the main character and his neighbor. It's honestly like a mix of Evil Dead and The Burbs, and I'm here for it. It has a bit of depth to its fun and a lot of heart. House 2, on the other hand, is a giant turd, and I resent its smell. The only thing these movies have in common is they both take place in a house, but it's a completely different house, and a different character, a different story, different tone, and it's really just such a boring and lame movie. It felt like 3 times longer than the first. It's not scary, half the runtime is just them hanging out with their undead great-great-grandpa, and it just never ends.
Wait, no, Gramps! It's the ozone! I mean, insect repellents, underarm deodorants, maybe just a pinch of communism. It's making the stars fade away.
The first movie is about a guy being haunted by a ghoulish creature and his past regrets, whereas this one, in this one, there's a crystal skull that the grandpa guy has, and it attracts bad people from all over time, and the house is inexplicably a gateway to the past where these threats come from. They go to Prehistoria, and there's some pterodactyl hijinks, and they befriend a caterpillar pug thing, and they save a chick from some knockoff Temple of Doom scene, and then they fight Grandpa's rival in the Wild Wild West. Honestly, just look at this scene. This is basically Full House mixed with dinosaurs and no humor. I hated this. None of it made sense, none of it's entertaining, and it really just pissed me off because the first one was such a pleasant surprise for me while I was making this list. Oh, and just when I thought the pathetic monster designs couldn't get any worse, they introduced a young Bill Maher. God, that guy's a douche. This movie put me in a bad mood. Absolutely don't recommend it. This one sadly goes into the unrecognizable category. And there you have it. My truly exhaustive list of wacky-ass sequels. Forgive me if I bash some of your childhood movies. I watched most of these movies for the first time while making this list, so I admittedly didn't have the benefit of nostalgia. I hope you enjoyed. I hate to say it, but please like and subscribe, because these take so much work and I'm dying in the algorithm. It all feels quite pointless, to be honest, but I do enjoy making them. Let me know if I missed any, or tell me why you think I suck and Rob Zombie movies are the best. You're wrong, though. All right, thank you. Cheers.